this is a nothing. Yes, did they play perfect? No, they still win. Yes.
What are you doing if the Celtics win the championship?
If the Celtics win championship, I might break my sobriety. I might act up.
We did it! You got him.
All the way.
Celtics versus Heat. Celtics in what?
4.
Celtics versus Knicks. Celtics in
4.
You got Celtics in 4? Hell yeah.
Use a vocab word from a couple years ago. It's mind-boggling.
That's it, DRG. Let's go. What do you think tonight? You think I'm worried about the Warriors? I ain't worried about the Let's go, baby. 18, baby. Load up the boat.
Why would you say that?
Because
I'm not. No,
recently he's putting up games like.
Above our head for the players.
Literally right now.
But I think when Marcus, especially Marcus, when he got traded, I think that was a wake-up call.
You think right now
Rob,
it's still New York?
I do. And when I think of the Celtics dynasty, honestly, one of the first names that comes to my mind is actually Brad Stevens.
Deep breath.
Get ready, everybody. Get ready.
Deep breath in and out. In and out.
Ooh,
We're going to get through this show together. It's going to be fun. We're going to have fun.
We're going to have
fun. This is going to be fun. And this is going to be great.
Everyone's going to be happy.
Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't it be, right? But What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into another Celtics Talk Weekly post-game show. I am your host, Rob Haytan. Joining with me is the three-headed monster. You guys know these guys. Nick Franco, Seamus Zarlingo, and Justin Lowe. Guys, tonight, well, the Celtics, they might have reached a new low. Final from the TD Garden, guys, 114-112 against the 2-seeded Houston Rockets. Former head coach Ime Udoka, guys, tonight he picks up his first win against the Boston Celtics in his Houston Rockets head coaching tenure, now 1-3. Guys, the Boston Celtics over the last 10 games at home are officially now 4-6. They are under 500, guys. They had a significant lead in that fourth quarter before Houston eventually stormed back and took the life out of the crowd, guys. Now, we got a lot. I mean, I'm going to say it one more time. We got a lot that we're going to talk about tonight. And there's going to be some serious conversations had regarding this team and where they're at. Before we get into them, I'm interested to hear everyone's initial thoughts, reactions, how you feel. But I think I might know what direction this is going to go.
It was a fun game. It was a really, really, really fun game. I enjoyed watching it. I thought the energy was there. I thought the effort was there. What I didn't think was there was the execution down the stretch. The Boston Celtics built themselves up an 11-point lead in the beginning of that fourth quarter. Obviously, Dillon Brooks was on the bench to start that fourth quarter, and the Celtics just collapsed. Dillon Brooks comes in, applies the pressure, starts trash talking to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and he just does everything possible to make sure the Jays do not get the Celtics back into this game, and he did his job tonight. Credit to Dillon Brooks, as annoying as he is. He's one of those players you'd probably love to have on your team but hate to play against. Luke Cornett, my man, had a phenomenal game tonight, but it's really hard to single out individual performances when you come out with yet another home loss. The Celtics, I have to admit, came out with a lot of energy, which you do question coming off a long road trip and obviously just a day's worth of rest coming off a flight from Dallas. So I do give the Celtics credit for coming out and playing with some energy tonight and some effort. That was definitely one of the more fun games I've watched the Celtics play in a little bit. Yet at the same time, one of the most gut-wrenching games I've seen the Boston Celtics play, because we had this one, fellas. I know the Celtics had some guys out tonight on the injury report, but you don't want to throw those excuses on, because actually the Celtics have been better when guys have been on the injury report for our own team. So just a very, very frustrating, head-scratching game tonight. And the Celtics now are 3-9 following a win this month. 3-9, 0-5 at home. The Celtics cannot buy a home win for their lives when all season long. Last year, I know last year's last year and we're in the moment now, but last year, talk about between the preseason and the NBA Finals, Celtics had only lost, 6, 7, 8 games at home. It is not the same this year at the TD Garden. And I don't know what it is, but we're going to get into it for the next hour and a half.
What a way to open up a game, and what a sucky way to close out a game. That was mainly down to execution. You can totally see that the Celtics team has the talent to eke out these wins against a talented team. We should have given the Houston Rockets a little bit more credit at the end of last post game. We said this was a game that the Celtics should win, and today I can't agree with that. This is a game that the Celtics could have easily had in the bag if a few things went right for them. We had a little bit more execution from our star players and more key times. We saw Jason Tatum starting to attack the rim at the end of the game, which was about 30 minutes too late into the game for him to begin doing that. A lot of shot chucking started to happen in the meat of tonight's game. They weren't able to get the ball flowing. It seems like they had the hot hand at the beginning and they were just waiting for that to come back at some point for them. And I just really didn't see this type of execution from Joe Mazzulla coming. The rotations tonight were absolutely atrocious. The players, I mean, you had Tillman and Keita at the same time for a large portion, a little bit more longer than you would want them to be on the court unless you have a 20-point lead. But
even then, yeah,
garbage time. But it was just a really well coached or a very poorly coached game by Joe Mazzulla tonight. There were flaws on the defensive end. There's no reason why Houston should have been able to score 2 times within those last 30 seconds. One was absolutely atrocious when you had Luke Cornett trying to isolate up at top and just left a free lane to the rack to give him a free 2 points. But a lot we can pull from this game, but we're back to inconsistency.
This Celtics ball club. We'll get my driver, all right? Get the driver because I'm about to tee off on the Celtics right now.
Tee off like a par 5. Come on.
The Celtics are a 500 basketball team. They're a 500 basketball team. I don't care about the 19-4 start at this point in time. They're 500 since that point. Look at the records on the bottom of the screen right now. The Rockets, they're 31-14. The Boston Celtics, they're 32-15. Technically, they're on par with the Houston Rockets this year, which the Houston Rockets, they've been a phenomenal ball club for what they've been able to accomplish this season. But you're looking at a team that was 500 last year in the Houston Rockets and terrible the year before. And I'm not saying the Rockets right now. I'm not saying the Boston Celtics. This is an inferior opponent because this is a very good opponent the Boston Celtics played tonight. But ultimately, this Houston Rockets team, they're on the same level as the Boston Celtics. But really what we've seen the last month out of both of these teams, the Rockets are actually a better basketball team. And you saw it tonight out on the Garden floor. We saw it throughout the night. The Celtics, they come out and actually punch the Rockets in the mouth to start this game. And we're thinking, oh, this might be another blowout win for the Celtics. Nice. Another building block in place. Not a stepping stone, but a building block in place. But at the end of the first quarter, I'm going to touch on this first because, Franco, you mentioned the rotations. The rotations tonight, what is going on with Joe Mazzulla and his rotations? What is going on? Are you against the Clippers? Okay, against the Clippers, who are playing absolutely nobody. No Zubac, no Harden, no Powell, no Kawhi Leonard in that game. Very little experimentation in that game, even though we saw Walsh, even though we saw Shireman, even though we saw Jaden Springer actually come in and save the game. If that Springer stretch doesn't happen, we're not even talking about those 3 players because it was very small stints, and it was really all because the Celtics were missing 3 players themselves, Porzingis, Horford, and Holiday that particular night. No experimentation really in that Clippers game. We come out, play the Lakers, go down by 20 early. Nope. No spark plugs coming in there. No experimentation there. No. Why not experiment in that game when the starters aren't giving you anything? Yet tonight, the starters come out, actually give the Celtics something. And of course, there's no Derek White in this game, no Al Horford as well. And of course, the Celtics, what do? Or rather, Joe Mazzulla and the coaching staff starts experimenting against essentially a top 5 team in the NBA. You just had a chance against the mediocre Lakers team. You just had a chance against the G League Clippers team. And on Sunday, you actually faced the Dallas Mavericks without Luka Doncic too. So, or I should say Saturday. Keep getting that day wrong. I have no idea why. It was a Saturday game against the Dallas Mavericks. That game as well. Yet tonight, why experiment tonight? We're back home on the Garden floor. We need this win because the Celtics can't gain any consistency whatsoever. And yet at the end of the first quarter, when the collapse started to happen for the Boston Celtics, which was the first collapse, there were multiple collapses in this game, as we're going to look at the lead tracker here in a second. But that first collapse, Kata is out on the floor. Tillman, who we've been screaming, can we just see Tillman play in some situation? This was the worst situation
we take
to
it
play
back.
Tillman in. Tillman, Kata out on the floor. And then you have Jordan Walsh out there as well. You switch Brown and Tatum out, and you also have Pritchard out there. That was one of the worst rotations you could have thrown out there if you were Joe Mazzulla against the Houston Rockets, and it showed in the score. The Celtics were up by quite a few points in the first quarter, and then after those guys came out, after the first quarter was done, the Houston Rockets were in the lead. And then you go later in the game as well. This goes a little bit further away from rotations, but just in terms of execution, the Celtics, they grabbed themselves a 12-point lead. It's 101-89, and it actually looks like, oh, here we go. The Celtics, they're turning it up in the fourth quarter. They're having a good start to the fourth quarter, and it looks like the Celtics can actually come out and win this game against a quality opponent at home, and maybe, just maybe, they'll put that building block in place, and we can come in here and say some positive things about the Boston Celtics. Nope. 13-0 run for the Houston Rockets, and guess which team has more energy during that stretch? It's the Houston Rockets, and we've seen it all season long with the Boston Celtics against the Cleveland Cavaliers, against the Oklahoma City Thunder, against the Houston Rockets tonight. The younger teams who have not won anything in this league are playing with more energy, more intensity than the Boston Celtics, more care as well, and the inconsistency shows all over the place for the Celtics, not only in their record right now in the months of December and January, but in individual games. Individual games, the Celtics will have phenomenal stretches. They had phenomenal stretches tonight to start the game, to start the fourth quarter. And what happens? You end both of those quarters terribly. You actually, in multiple quarters tonight, give up over 30 points to the Houston Rockets. And ultimately, the Celtics, they can't play a full 48 minutes. And we're just sitting here talking about the same old thing with this Boston Celtics club. And it's getting utterly annoying because I'm tired of coming in here after a good win, after a win against the Magic, after a win against the Warriors, after a win against the Mavericks, and saying, look at how this team plays defensively. Look at how this team plays offensively. They can just play this way every single night. They are the best team in the NBA. Well, folks, if you can't put it together for a full 48 minutes, you can't put it together for a full consistent stretch of games, more than 3 games. The Celtics have won 3 games in a row only twice since the beginning of December. This is the same club that would rattle off 6, 7, 8 wins last year, and that would be the norm. Now we can't even win 3 in a row, much less 2 in a row, and we did it the other day against the Clippers and the Warriors, barely beating out the Clippers in overtime. Everybody's going, oh, thank goodness, for the first time in 3 weeks, we've won 2 in a row. Well, now we are just, this is, I don't even want to bring up the rock bottom conversation because it just, like we said against Toronto, Justin, you'll say it even now. Rock bottom can go much further than where we are right now, and we've seen since that Toronto game, it has gone much further because there are 3 quality wins in there. 3 quality wins. Other than that, all of either the win against the Clippers and all of the other losses, whether you're talking about the Hawks loss, the Lakers loss, tonight's loss, these are terrible games, and really the ones watching it, which is all of us, we can tell you that because everybody will look at the box scores and the scores. And Richard Jefferson was saying on the broadcast the other night, oh, well, the Celtics, they have been competitive in these games. They lost in overtime to the Hawks. And even tonight, oh, they lost by 2 points to the Rockets. No, these games the Celtics had significant leads in, let the rope go entirely in multiple quarters within the game, and let it slip out from under their nose. And you cannot be doing this if you're a championship team, because in the playoffs, the margins matter. And the Celtics, they're not going to be able to go into the playoffs and, oh, looks like we just lost game 5 tonight, guys. Oh, game 6. It just slipped away from us tonight. The Celtics, this is terrible what we're going through right now. This is worse than being a bad basketball team, because bad basketball teams know exactly what they're going to do on a nightly basis, which is lose ball games, and that's just what it is, and they're going one way or the other. Oh, we're losing games or we're not. Tonight, this is just another example of the Celtics being a 500 basketball team while somehow contending for the title in a season where they should be going back to back. And really, this is what makes the Celtics, the motivation, so hard to gain if you're the Boston Celtics. You won it last year. You have this aura about you coming into the season. Oh, we're coming in motivated. Oh, well, no, this is not real motivation. We're not seeing it on a nightly basis. We're seeing it from teams like the Rockets, like the Cavs, like the Thunder, who have actually not won anything in the NBA, who are younger than the Boston Celtics and are playing harder on a nightly basis. The Celtics cannot put together a consistent stretch of games. And at this point in time, it's annoying, and we're going to get more into this as the post game goes on. But some of the mistakes tonight, come on, really? From Brown and Tatum down the stretch, what are we doing? What are we doing? These are players with real legit accolades who are going to be in the Hall of Fame later on in time, no doubt about that. Regardless of what this result is and the season's result is, they're going to be in the Hall of Fame. And yet tonight, it's high school stuff, it's college stuff. We've literally been saying this about the team for the past month. And when is it going to stop? When is it going to stop?
I'll say this. I actually really liked what I saw for Boston tonight.
I didn't have a problem with this game. Not a huge problem.
No, I have a problem with this game.
No, Justin, I'm not going to allow Justin to say this. No, you have to have a problem with this game. This is a loss. Because this is the attitude that Joe Mazzulla brings. Okay, he goes, we're not going to be as dominant this season. What does everybody expect? We do expect them to be as dominant this season. They're the same team, and this is a loss.
Enjoyable game to watch for most of this game. 110% compared to, I understand we lost, not justifying a loss. We lost. We suck. We've been win, loss, win, loss. We are the Atlanta Hawks. That's what we are right now. The Atlanta one game we look like a championship.
They're probably better than us right now in the last 10, maybe.
But this game, there were a lot more moments in this game that I saw where I was pleased with than not, compared to other games that I've recently seen.
Well, let me say this too. Let me preface this. In terms of, I liked what I saw from Boston because you are playing the second seed in the West. You are without Derek White. You have Kristaps. Excuse me. You got Kristaps Porzingis in foul trouble all game. You have Dylan Brooks playing a career night. You have Amin Thompson playing a career night. You are getting Houston's best shot. There's no doubt about that. You are getting a very good team's best shot, and you are still in the game. You're doing good things, right? The first quarter, I'm not super concerned. All right, yes, it's a bad stretch of basketball, but again, you're playing a good team that's motivated, that's playing really well. That's going to happen. My concern with this team, in this loss in particular, was what transpired in the fourth quarter.
That's you,
right. And that's the part that's concerning. Execution should not be a problem with a championship team. You should be able to, at home against the Houston Rockets, be able to execute down the stretch with your eyes closed. That was the problem. Boston played a good game tonight. Again, when you look at what happened and what the X's and O's of this game actually presented, okay, bad first half from Tatum. What happens? He steps up in the second half, right? Like, things happened in this game that I liked. We played well. And then you let up a 13-0 run in the fourth. You have a a collapse on defense on the final play of the game, right? You drew up a good play. You got to the rim. You got Tatum open downhill on a great look at like an action that Celtics fans have been asking for to see execution-wise down the stretch for what feels like the entire Missoula experience. Now we finally see that. And then what happens on the other end? Missoula looks confused. He takes Porzingis out because they're going to foul. And then Porzingis doesn't come back in. And Cornette and Brown are looking at the sideline. And then they're looking at each other. And then they're about to switch. And then they stop switching. And then Amin Thompson gets the ball. He's looking through him. He's like, oh shit, I have an open lane to the rim. And he wins the game for him. So it's like, yes, while Boston played well, right, where I stand on that, tonight was actually Boston played well. They threw all of that out the window with a Washington Wizards-esque execution in the fourth quarter. That's what matters about tonight's game. And
you can see like the playing well to me like doesn't matter because this keeps happening.
Exactly.
With the team.
Right. Yeah. Which is exactly my point was, yes, Boston played well tonight. Good. That doesn't matter right now. You need to execute. You need to win the game. This is a team, right? You might say, oh, these guys, the Celtics are 32-15. They're the second seed. They got the third best. That doesn't matter. When you have been bad now for 2 months, right? The Celtics over the last 20 games, guys, they're 11-9. That's good in the East for like about the 7 seed. Like that's how they've been playing the past 2 months of the season. It has now been more than half of this year. Boston's been playing poorly. They have been playing poorly for longer than they have played well this season. And that's a problem, guys. Let's look at this atrocious lead tracker. Guys, 4 minutes into that fourth quarter, the Celtics led by their biggest margin of the game, guys. A 12-point lead for the Celtics. And what do you see happen out of the Houston Rockets? The hungry and young Houston Rockets. They chipped and chipped and chipped and continue to chip away until eventually you can see there in the little last centimeter of this score tracker, the Houston Rockets absolutely steal this game from Boston. Guys, tonight, what went wrong in that just debacle, that just terrible of a stretch of the fourth quarter that we saw?
You know, I don't think the Celtics can handle when players talk trash to them and convert. Like I genuinely, and I said this earlier in the game. I said I do not like Jaylen Brown talking back to Dylan Brooks whatsoever. And what did Dylan Brooks do the whole rest of the game? In fact, that lead tracker, when that fourth quarter the lead started to slip, it went from 11 to 7 to 4, then up 2 for Houston. That's when Dylan Brooks came back into the game. That is it. Right. That is exactly what happened. But through the course of this game, man, oh my goodness, Tatum came alive in that third quarter. Had a couple plays there towards the end of the fourth, but we talk about the rotations with Joe. In my opinion, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have to be better. They have to be better, especially down the stretch. Who's turning the ball over? Who's missing shots? Who's the defensive mislapses coming up? Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. That's it. Obviously, there's 3 other guys on the floor that need to execute just as well as those two. But those 2 guys, the ball's going to be in their hands. The ball's in their court. They have to be better. There's no excuse. We want to hold certain bench players accountable. Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard for staying in their roles. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, we have to hold accountable. Our 2 best players, we have to hold accountable as well. They have to be better. Tonight, I'm putting this loss on it. Obviously, the whole team lost this game. I know everybody's favorite quote. It took a whole team effort to lose this one. But Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, Seamus, don't stop smirking. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown hurt me tonight. That's what hurt me tonight. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, it almost felt artificial during the first half of today's game when the Celtics were able to create that lead. You obviously had players hitting their shots. You had Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis in the first quarter going back to back, hitting each shot, hitting ridiculous 3-pointers. I saw Kristaps, the first shot of the game was just to knock me off my feet. But other than that, Jason Tatum not holding up and having 0 points, that is a very big sign of concern, especially if the team is going to win. I thought Jason Tatum was going to be able to turn it on during the second half of tonight's game. Obviously, he started cutting to the rim, but it just was too late for it, and it didn't really help this team out in the long run or help win this game, especially when they were getting beat on the defensive side of things. But it seemed it was just really the Houston Rockets that I want to give credit to their depth. They did a good job tonight. They were seemed like a fresher team just because of how much talent they have coming off the bench. It seemed like every time that the Celtics were taking a player out, there wasn't anyone to fill in for them. We had Kristaps Porzingis playing tonight. He was in foul trouble pretty much the entire game from the first quarter on to the fourth when he was riding 5 fouls, and he couldn't really even be considerate of trying to get into the nitty-gritty things down in the paint with Sengun and Brooks when it came down to it. But I really just think that this team has a very big problem with getting too comfortable, and it seems like that is the theme of the Boston Celtics during their inconsistent runs. They are way too comfortable with the situation that they're in, the position that they're in. I'm not sure if I haven't checked the standings in probably about a day or so. I don't know how close the Knicks are to creeping up on them.
They're looking.
No, it doesn't even matter. But I was expecting a lot more coming into this home stretch. They had a lot of confidence coming off that win against the Dallas Mavericks. Jaylen Brown was quoted saying that, "Oh, it's going to start soon, this winning streak. We're going to get it back." And usually when that happens and Jaylen Brown says that the tides are changing or the team's the energy is about to shift for the team, it usually they follow through with it. But tonight they were punched in the mouth, and they just haven't found a way to respond all season whenever that happens. I mean, you look back to the Orlando Magic game a couple weeks ago when you had the Orlando Magic playing the most physical type of ball that we've seen in a long time. And as we've been saying all season, every single team in the NBA, all 30 teams, no one's going to see the Boston Celtics on their schedule and say it's an off night. They're going to come into the game knowing that they have a chance to create a major upset and be able to gain that confidence within themselves by beating a team who is supposedly supposed to be the defending champions and supposed to be the front runners to contend for a championship this year. And it's kind of really faded away, and I honestly don't know if this team needs a real. I think the inconsistency needs to stop either way, and I think it stops either with a winning streak or, knock on wood, worst case scenario, I feel like this team needs to get their asses handed to them like once or twice in a row to
they already
saw
have.
that.
What?
What do you
We
mean?
just saw that.
The Lakers
We just-
game, losing games like this.
I'm
Atlanta,
talking about a
Houston.
streak. It's been way
We
too
have.
up
It's
and
been
down.
2 months. It's been 2 months. It has been
2 months.
No,
Can I just preface something real quick? Real quick. I just want to listen to this and shout out Greenberg, Stool Greeny on X, whatever it should be Twitter, X, for this tweet, guys. Now the Celtics, when they led by that 12-point lead in that fourth quarter, right? 8:38 to play, 8 minutes left. Now from 8:38 to 4:53 of that fourth quarter, the Boston Celtics, they went without a single point. In those possessions, we got a Tatum turnover on a lob to Keita, a shot clock violation turnover. Jaylen Brown missed 14-footer. Drew Holiday missed 15-footer. Drew Holiday turnover. Drew Holiday blocked 3-point attempt. In that same stretch of offensive struggle, guys, the Houston Rockets on the offensive end of the floor went 5 of 6, shooting 83%, knocking down a 3, guys. They absolutely, Boston, just gave the game away. They stopped executing on offense, and they said, well, hell, if we're not scoring on offense, if there's a rough stretch, why even guard them on defense?
Yeah, defensively is really, for me personally, where some of the biggest concerns are with this Boston Celtics team at this moment in time, because effort will show on the defensive end of the floor. And the Celtics, they'll have moments where they look like an elite defensive squad. On Saturday, got the day right that time, against the Dallas Mavericks, there were moments in that game where the Celtics legitimately looked elite defensively. Go back to the Warriors game. Same ordeal. Go back to the Magic game. The Celtics looked elite defensively, and it all has to do with how physical they're guarding their opponent, where they are in terms of positioning on the floor relative to themselves and the ball and the rest of the defense, and what the team, of course, their opponent is trying to do. It has everything to do with their effort, physicality, intensity on the defensive end of the floor, their awareness on that end of the floor as well. The Celtics, when they're locked in defensively, they are an elite defensive squad. They have one of the best defensive backcourts in the entire NBA, if not NBA history. I know one of them, they were out tonight. Derek White was out of the lineup on this specific occasion, but they have one of the best backcourts defensively in NBA history. They have Tatum and Brown, two elite wings. They have Kristaps Porzingis sitting up there as a 7'3" center in their starting lineup. Then off the bench, you have Al Horford, who really at times has been just phenomenal for a 38-year-old on the defensive end of the floor this season. Pritchard, he defends his ass off every single game, no matter what. Sam Hauser, of course, was out tonight. I'm not going to say anything about him defensively this year at all, but I'm just going to note that he was out of the lineup. Luke Cornett defensively has been pretty good this season in terms of his defensive presence. Even Keita when he comes out onto the floor. And let's say this about Xavier Tillman real quick before we still go back into the defense and talk about it. Xavier Tillman, we talked about this with Xavier last month. Xavier on the show, not Xavier Tillman, of course. But on the show here, we were talking about how Joe Mazzulla, why is he trying to use Xavier Tillman as this three-point shooter? What is going on there? He is somebody who can really bang down inside the paint. And as a three-point shooter, he's always been a sub 30% three-point shooter. Well, tonight, you throw out Xavier Tillman into the lineup next to Keita, who right there, okay, I understand the double bigs tonight, because if you look at the Houston Rockets roster, their only two big guys are essentially Şengün and Steven Adams. And Steven Adams isn't exactly the greatest center at this point in his career. So you basically only have Şengün out there. So the Celtics, they were going double big a lot tonight with Cornett and Porzingis specifically, even Keita out there a lot as well. But then in the first quarter, you bring out Keita and Tillman. Well, those are two guys right there who are not giving you anything from the perimeter, straight up, not giving you anything. Mm-hmm. You pair him with Tatum, you pair him with Brown, and Tatum and Brown flip-flopped at the end of the first quarter, so it was one or the other. Then you pair him with Walsh, who does nothing with the ball in his hands, and essentially Pritchard as well. So you have two offensive options out there if you're the Boston Celtics. At that point in time, you have either Pritchard or Tatum and two bigs who don't shoot from beyond the arc, and one of them, in Xavier Tillman, well, he shoots anyway, and he's 0 of 3 on the night from the field, 0 of 2 from 3, and it just highlights how Joe Mazzulla, I've not been a fan of his experimentation as of late, or really lack thereof, and then coming into tonight and experimenting, but also on top of that, he apparently has no idea how to use Xavier Tillman, and we've already had this conversation about Xavier Tillman earlier this season when we came on here after a game against the Pistons talking about it. But in terms of the defensive end of the floor of the Boston Celtics, just naming out all the players, tonight, the defensive end of the floor was the reason as to why Dillon Brooks and Amen Thompson had career nights. Because if you look at their numbers tonight, Amen Thompson, 13 of 19 from the floor. And the biggest highlight of the night was his game winner down the stretch against the Boston Celtics with 0.7 left on the shot clock, or sorry, not shot clock, just the game clock in general. And that play, Jaylen Brown, he has to put a body into him. He has to create that wall between himself and the rim and not let Amen Thompson get such an easy shot. And even that shot Amen Thompson had beforehand against Kristaps Porzingis. Porzingis actually, he contested that quite well, but that was, again, way too open, way too close to the basket. That's what we also want to highlight here, how close these shots were to the basket specifically. Ime Thompson, he's becoming a phenomenal player in the NBA. He's in his second year. I believe he's going to be potentially an all-star level player one day with his ability out there on the floor. And with Ime Udoka as a head coach, you never know where his ceiling is going to go. We already saw where Ime Udoka took Brown and Tatum during that one season in 21-22. What he can do with Ime Thompson is going to be something spectacular to watch in the future. And don't forget, too, he has a twin in Detroit. I know you know about this, Justin Osir Thompson. Now, he's not having as great of a season as Ime Thompson, but Ime Thompson certainly give it up to him. But on the other end, Dillon Brooks, 13 of 23 for the night.
Don't even read it.
10 of 15. 10 of 15 from three. That is a Houston Rockets franchise record of threes made in a game. And Dillon Brooks, he was talking all the ish all night long, even giving kisses to the crowd. Those kisses, you know who he was imitating there? Mr. Jason Tatum. You don't think he was watching film of Jason Tatum weeks prior leading up to this game and going, yep, I see that move right there, and I'm going to do it when I hit all of these threes in front of the Garden crowd. 10 of 15 tonight from Dillon Brooks from three-point land, and this just highlights the terrible defensive effort at times for the Boston Celtics in this game, because really in the first quarter, they started out well, and it's indicative in that lead tracker. The beginning of the first, beginning of the fourth, Celtics played extremely well on both ends of the floor. But then all of a sudden, you're looking at the end of the first quarter, and the Houston Rockets, they have 31 points up on the board. You look at the fourth quarter, the Celtics are up 12. All of a sudden, you allow a 13-0 run. And Rob, you already brought up the stats from that run by the Houston Rockets. They go 5 of 6 from the floor. And really, it all came down to the end of the game when two defensive mistakes happen. Oh, what is this?
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to me. I mean, I didn't know. It's in a couple months, folks, but I guess we're doing it early this year.
What was that?
But I don't know. Two defensive mistakes and balloons. That's essentially what the Celtics looked like apparently out on the floor. That's what the Houston Rockets saw in front of them, is just balloons they could smack out of the way, because ultimately that Şengün cut to the rim, there's no backside help on that play whatsoever. Nobody to come and slide over, which that could be a result of a good play call by Ime Udoka, a good ATO by Ime Udoka as well, just getting everybody out of the paint. But also Luke Cornett just completely lets Şengün go around him. Wide open dunk inside the lane. Next play, you love what Jason Tatum did, and that's actually a frustrating play, because you look at that and go, well, why couldn't you do that in the first half, Tatum? Why can't you do that throughout all of these games?
Ever.
Why? Because that play, he has Ime Thompson, who's an all NBA level defender on him. And he just takes him to the rim. He takes him to the rim for 2, ties the game. And then the next possession, Ime Thompson gets the ball. We already talked about this. Jaylen Brown's defending the play like it's the second quarter, or like it's the first quarter, or like it's not the biggest possession of the entire game, and just, lets him hit him, and he goes flying. Where's the resistance? The hips, the feet, the shoulders for Jaylen Brown. Where is the resistance? That was ridiculous. That was absolutely ridiculous for an all-NBA level player. That was absolutely ridiculous for a player who's going to be an all-star this season. And it's absolutely ridiculous for a player who has tremendous prided himself on being one of the best defenders on the Boston Celtics for years now, and somehow gives up that play down the stretch. And I think it really highlights to me that maybe this team this season at this point in time, they are tired. They are tired. They don't have the energy to bring every single night. They don't have it every single possession, because we can see the greatness within the little streaks coming through the window. If you shine a light through a window, you can see those lights, those beams of greatness coming through the window for the Boston Celtics. Yet the shades aren't open all the time, folks. They're not open. We only see the beams. You see the shade for the Boston Celtics the rest of the game, and it's very indicative in that lead tracker. It's very indicative to me on the defensive end of the floor specifically, and it came out at the worst point in this game down the stretch. Really, this is a theme with the Celtics as of late. Just make a stop. Just make a slew of stops. You're scoring on one end of the floor. Just make a stop. Just make a slew of stops. They can't. And we don't have any confidence in them doing so either. And I have no idea when this is going to turn around, because it seems like everybody knows every single problem that's going on. And the team, it's not as if there's a piece or the personnel is all wacky like 21, 22, and we're going, oh, just take Schroeder out. Oh, take Richardson out. Oh, insert Derek White and Daniel Tice. Everything's fine. And that's not how this team is built right now. The pieces are here. I just don't know when the full entire 48 minutes of effort is going to come out, because we see it sometimes and other times it just looks terrible, and it really takes away. This is what a 500 team does. We know this from 21-22. The 500 teams, they equally put out bad moments that cancel out all the good, and that's why they're so hard to talk about. They do so many good things, but then on the other end, they do so many bad things that immediately cancel out all of those good things. And that's what the Celtics are running in right now. They are running in that 500 record, and it's pitiful to watch at this point in time. It's pitiful. It's January 27th. When are we going to see it? When are we going to see it?
I was
January 10th.
I was listening to the Bill Simmons podcast. Doesn't need a shout out, but on his newest episode, I really recommend going listening to it. Essentially, kind of what he is talking about is about this Boston Celtics team, and about kind of teams going back to back, teams that are on a title defense. And what he talks about is kind of how at some point in the regular season, those teams, they have to make a decision whether or not they're serious about doing this. Do they have that fight in them that they had in the year prior, that sense of urgency, right? Last year, we saw Boston, they kind of played almost every single game like, okay, it's make or break. If we don't do it this year, then it's right, bad things are coming. That's kind of what you need. And I want to say this to Celtics fans. If you can sit here and watch what's transpiring with this team and seriously convince yourself that there isn't a reason to be alarmed, then God bless you. Because right now, you can't ignore what signs the Celtics are putting out there. I understand it. It's game, 47. I understand it, that this is a very talented team that could turn up in any second. I understand that. However, what they have shown us the past 20 games is inconsistent, is lackluster execution, and is really just bad basketball. In 20 games is an awfully large sample size to just forget about it and to turn and look the other way. So I'm going to say this, because in years prior, covering the Boston Celtics, I have turned an eye to the warning signs that this team used to present. Right now, the warning signs with this Celtics team are going, the radar's beeping and they are off the rocker, and it's going off, right? And
are you hitting the panic button?
Well, here's the thing, right? Because the panic button, this team is so good.
Well, what's beeping right now? Is it the panic? Did you accidentally hit it and you're not trying to hit it?
So here's the thing. I got right next to my panic button, I got a little panic meter, right? And it's gonna auto beep when it maxes out, right? And I survey it, right? And what it shows me is
quick tabs.
What it shows me, right, is that okay, there are warnings, there are signs, right, that make that button beep and then make that button go off. This Celtics teams in the NBA, they show you stuff, right? The 82 games, believe it or not, it's actually kind of just a study test for the NBA playoffs, right? It's really just a practice exam. Right now, the Celtics, well, they're showing me everything on this practice exam, right, that they're not going to pass this test. Right, it's not just
series right now. They would be screwed,
and then that's what I'm saying. They have bad habits. There's a lot of time to fix those bad habits, but right now, January 27th at 11/11/2025, they're failing. Yeah, I know that's pretty cool, right? I mean, I'm not gonna, but they're failing the test, right? They don't know the material. They are failing the test. If the test got put in front of them today. Luckily for them, well, guess what, guys? The test is in April. However, you got to study your ass off, because if you don't, this Celtics team, they're going to be in trouble. And I do want to preface that because I've been reading comments on Instagram. I have been reading comments here on our YouTube. I've been reading comments on Twitter. X. Don't really care. Twitter. I've been reading them everywhere. And there are a large portion of Celtics Nation right now that's like, they're fine, they're good. No, nothing needs to change. No, they're the defending champions. It's like, no, look at what the history and the current trajectory and trend of the NBA is showing us. You don't go back to back. And right now, the Celtics, I don't know. I don't know if they can. If they keep showing me this, they're definitely not. They're going to need to turn their season around. They're going to need another 2021, 2022 shift within the energy because, guys, right now, it's not going to happen. I mean, there's just no way it does.
No, I completely agree with that right now. Well, we can't even win back-to-back. When we win back-to-back games, we go, oh my goodness, we haven't done this in 3 weeks. Well, we haven't won 3 games in a row. This is what's hilarious. We haven't won 3 games in a row in almost a month now. Almost a month. It's January 27th. It last happened 31st, the 2nd, and the 3rd. Right? December 31st, 2nd of January, 3rd of January. It's the 27th of January right now. And before that, we did it at the beginning of December. Well, how are we going to sweep a playoff series? How are we going to win a playoff series in 5 games if we can't even win 3 games in a row in the regular season in a month multiple times? I mean, right now, I completely agree with your analogy there, Rob, on how if you're giving them the practice test right now, they're failing every single part of it to the point where you look at it and go, there's no way that they're going to pass the actual test when that time comes due. That being said, there is a ton of time until that actually happens, but I am highly concerned regardless right now because first of all, I'm going to make this guarantee. January can be very weird in the NBA. I'm going to make this guarantee real quick. The Oklahoma City Thunder and the Cleveland Cavaliers will not face off in the 2025 NBA Finals. That's what everybody thinks. It's not happening. It's not happening. You hear it here on January 27th when the Celtics face the Rockets. But anyway, January, it can be a weird month for teams. We've seen last year the Celtics actually had their worst month of the entire season in January. And we're still in this month. There's still a lot of time to be had with this team. But I'm still, regardless, I'm still concerned because this Celtics team, where are they finding motivation? Because I don't see any points of motivation with this team. They just won a championship last year. You have Tatum, White, and Holiday, all gold medalists from this past summer. And you're seeing time and time again, this team gets smacked and lose close games to the point where you'd look at it and go, okay, we lost terribly to the Kings. Well, how did we come out against the Pelicans? Well, we nearly lost to the Pelicans. Oh, and then after that game, what happens? We barely won against the Pelicans off of a CJ McCollum layup that didn't go in at the end of the game that you egregiously allow if you're the Boston Celtics. Well, the next game we get blown out in Toronto. You come out, thankfully, the Celtics go and blow out the Orlando Magic, but then after that game, and we lose to the Atlanta Hawks because we can't execute correctly down the stretch. We score 15 points in the second quarter. Then we go out, face the Warriors, blowout win, 40-point win there. The next night against the Los Angeles Clippers, or rather 2 nights later, you play a terrible game. And that goes into overtime that the Celtics should have came out and went, this opponent for us tonight. This is the difference between the 23 and 24 Celtics, the 23-24 and the 24-25 Celtics, is that specific Clippers game. They would have looked at that game last year like fresh meat. They go, everybody's out of the lineup. We're resting in the fourth quarter. Instead, they were playing overtime in that game against Amir Coffey and Kevin Porter Jr. and Derek Jones Jr., who had a phenomenal night of 29 points, who's a role player. And again, all those role players are 1 stars. Not trashing on them too much, but you still get the competition level in the NBA. Next night, you get thrashed by your rival in the Los Angeles Lakers. The Los Angeles Lakers and Boston Celtics rivalry, it's the most storied rivalry in not only in the NBA, but really in all of sports. And the Celtics can't even get up for that game. They can't get up for that game at all. Then they come out on Sunday in the Dallas game. They actually come out and look terrible in the beginning of the first quarter in that game. Thankfully, they turn it around in the third by the help of Derek White, who was out tonight. And then you come home and you think, okay, well, here we go. We're going to put some games together, right? We're coming back home from a West Coast road trip, 3-1 again. Some points of optimism. Nope, you lose again to the Houston Rockets after starting out well. You finish the first quarter terribly. The rest of the game goes up and down. Hey, fourth quarter, you play well to start the fourth, and nope, 13-0 run. Where's the point of motivation coming within this team? They've had their asses handed to them multiple times. They've seen multiple stretches where they have not played good basketball whatsoever. Last year, they won the title. They're not necessarily going after something they've never won before. You have multiple gold medalists on this team. At what point are they actually going to turn the corner? That's not a banned word on here. Turning point is the banned one. But turn the corner is fine. When are they going to turn the corner? When are they going to turn the corner and actually go on a run? Because that's what I'm concerned with most, is where is the motivation coming out of the Celtics to actually do that? I can see it from the Cavs. I can see it from the Thunder. I can see it from the Rockets clearly from what we saw tonight. I don't see it from the Boston Celtics right now. And to me, I'm not hitting the panic button because this team can still be very good. But I'm highly, highly concerned specifically with the motivation of the squad. And even I mentioned it a couple weeks ago when we were on that Kings post game. They played a lot of basketball the past couple of years as well. If there is a point later on in the playoffs where the little margins matter for the Boston Celtics, are they going to say, we are turning our game up to another level, and this is why we are the best team in the NBA? This is why we want to go back to back. Or are they going to look at it and go, ooh, it's been a long 2 seasons. It's just time to go home. That's the concerning part about the Boston Celtics. And we'll have to see and wait. We'll have to wait and see what happens later on in time. But at this moment in time, it's not looking good right now. It's not.
Well,
Nothing looks good.
And I think that's kind of got to be the overall assumption in question with this team at this point of the year, regardless of kind of how they look the next month and a half, is, okay, what does this team look like post All-Star break? Do they look more energetic? Do they look more revived? Do they look more into it? And part 2 to the question would be, do they just randomly turn it up to another level in the playoffs and they become a team that is very difficult to beat again? Unfortunately, we can't answer those questions right now because, one, we've never seen this team play together, kind of have an up and down year and just randomly turn it up on the playoffs. That didn't happen last year. They were dominant throughout, right? And then the second part that kind of makes it hard to answer this question, right, is that it's not All-Star break. And, you know, we've never seen this team go through a rough patch, and you just have to wait and see. And that's kind of where I'm at. Just wait and see. Because,
well, I'm going to add this too. How many teams in NBA history have we seen actually do that? Very, very few.
Can I ask something? Okay, technically, yes. But also, how long can we get away with saying it's a rough patch when it's been almost 2 months and over about 20 games? That's just, I'm not eliminated. No, I'm just saying, no, I'm just saying, like, is it
rough season?
Is rough patch? Are we kind of stretching that term out a little? Not specifically us. Everybody's using it. But we could. But almost 20 games, almost 2 months. Are we stretching out that rough patch?
A little bit.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. This is more than a rough patch. This is becoming a rough season at this point. It is. And I'll say this. If we do win the championship, it's going to be more special this season because of how rough this point in time is. Because last year was a breeze. Right now, this is way more than a rough patch. We played more rough than we've played well this season so far. We really have.
Rough than patch.
So I did some digging, and I've been on my research grind here. Kind of digging through at previous past NBA champion teams who have gone back to back. What really stuck out to me, in my opinion, was the biggest data point for, and what I was looking for, right, within this search, was how many teams win their first title in the following year are actually worse in the regular season. However, they still manage to go on and win the NBA Finals, right? Because right now, that's where the Celtics are at, right? Dominant 64-win team last year, going to the NBA playoffs, and just run through the playoffs. Here we are, fast forward 5 months in the year, 4 months into the season, this new year, and they've been, nothing short of disappointing to their standards. What stuck out to me is the 2000-2001 Los Angeles Lakers. In 2000, the LA Lakers won 67 games good enough for the 1 seed in the NBA, going on to win the NBA Finals. Guys, that following year, the Los Angeles Lakers won 56 games. 56 and 26 were the 2 seed out west. We know how dominant they were in that 2001 NBA playoffs. So that in my search, that is the data point that I'm going to kind of pin down. And if Boston talent-wise is as good and as historic as they're supposed to be in what last season showed us, then there is a good opportunity, a lot like that 2001 Lakers. They won 3 in a row, right? But that second in between, that little, and then that sandwich, they actually were worse the second time around through the regular season than they were the first time around. So in my eyes, it's still possible that the Celtics wake up. However, I didn't cover. I wasn't alive. First of all, I didn't cover that Lakers team, so I don't know to the extent of what that Laker team looked like. I'm gonna have to do a little more research on in terms of what they looked like. Were those 56 games won? What did those 26 losses look like? Because I want to compare them. But I do what you want with that data. But if you're looking for some hope, use that as some hope.
I still have hope.
Yes,
a lot of hope. I do. But it's just, and Seamus, you and I were talking about it the other night. Franco might have been there. He just was probably taping up his camera. But it's like we were just. It's yes, obviously we're annoyed and we're frustrated with this team, and concerned. But it's also so confusing. It's so hard to come on to this post-game show nowadays because Rob, do you remember when you and I first started in that 2021 season with Kemba Walker? It's like every game we were talking about a whole different Celtics team. It was just total. Well, that's because we got hired Franco, but it's just every single day, every single game we were talking about something that we were talking about the game before. It was just ongoing and ongoing and ongoing. And that's the vibe I'm getting right now with this team. The last month and a half, almost 2 months, is 2021 Celtics. Just very 500-esque basketball. One game, they look really, really solid, blowing out a team. And then the next game, they just look like they haven't picked up the basketball. And yes, even in those losses, they have their good moments. But when it comes down to winning time, when it matters most, Celtics can't execute. Yes, the Celtics did come out and play with some fire in that fourth quarter, but did it matter in the final 3 minutes when they gave up a 13-0 run and lost this game? No, it didn't. The Celtics lost. So it is frustrating. It is concerning, but at the same time, I do think that word confusing certainly pours into all that.
Absolutely. And let's kind of pivot here. Let's talk about the Kristaps Porzingis in the player of the game, guys. Now, we just want to give a quick shout out to SeatGeek. Guys, SeatGeek has you covered all season long for the Boston Celtics and any other live event in your area, guys. This post-game show is presented, obviously, by none other than SeatGeek. Guys, at checkout, use code Celtics Weekly for $20 off your first purchase. You can find that link in the top of our description down below. Again, that is Celtics Weekly. We just want to give a huge shout out to SeatGeek for sponsoring the show. Guys, tonight, Kristaps Porzingis obviously was in foul trouble. Didn't get to play much tonight, but in his efforts, I thought he was kind of the one gleaming light in an offensive dominance that he could give Boston. 17 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, threw in a block there in that game. Very efficient, 6 of 8, 3 of 4 from downtown. Obviously, guys, again, the volume really couldn't be there tonight for Kristaps Porzingis with playing with those fouls. I want to ask you guys something, though. Did Joe Mazzulla handle this Kristaps Porzingis? We talked about the rotations, and did Joe not properly handle Porzingis' minutes tonight to allow him to get that? And I understand it's not Joe's fault. Kristaps got 5 fouls, there is a coach does have and should have a plan to protect his players from getting that 5th foul right early on in that game. Porzingis couldn't play that start of that fourth quarter because he had 5 in that third. Is that is Joe to blame there?
I think it's both. I think it's really tough to coach that. I think it's tough to in that situation. I also think it's tough because when Kristaps Porzingis was essentially the only guy going tonight, it was really hard to take him out of the game. And it felt like anytime Kristaps Porzingis was taken out of the game, the energy of the game was really deflated on Boston's end. Not to go off on a huge tangent about Kristaps Porzingis, so you guys can't answer this question, but I want to just say that this Kristaps Porzingis and the way he's been playing as of late is the reason why I have still so much hope in this team. Kristaps Porzingis has been spectacular coming off of his injury. He had a few kind of took him a little bit to get acclimated back into the lineup, but as of late, he has looked absolutely spectacular. But maybe Boston's most consistent player as of late. I don't think that's such a hot take. But credit to Kristaps and, fingers and toes crossed. He's been able to stay healthy. A couple games sat here and there, mainly for management. But I'd really like to see, as I said earlier in the show, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown get going here, because if those guys can get going alongside Kristaps Porzingis, that really opens up the game for the rest of the roster, and that motivates. So credit to KP coming out tonight and playing his brand of basketball. And I think also it's really tough because Kristaps Porzingis, 7'3", big guy down low, trying to grab rebounds, has to be physical. He has to be physical. And I think that's what sucks about it. I think tonight, I am not blaming this loss on the officials, so please don't twist my words. But I do think tonight the officials on both sides gave a very quick whistle. I think it was very handsy touchy tonight.
So you think the refs, you think they blew this game?
No, jackass. I didn't.
Welcome into First Take.
No, I think no, but I think there were very handsy touchy fouls that shouldn't have been called on both sides. For sure. I think, or at least very quick to call them. For sure. And I think that factored into it. But Kristaps Porzingis, and I'll tell you right now, if we were allowed to show highlights tonight, easily the play of the game was when Kristaps Porzingis grabbed his putback, dunked it down, bumped Dylan Brooks and tucked up the Rockets bench and was chirping to Ime, walked over down cross court and pumped his chest out to the Celtics crowd. That definitely sparked some energy in this game. So credit to KP, but I think the 5 fouls was just a freak thing. I feel as if KP is never really in foul trouble. Right. I hope I don't jinx him, and this is something now he has a Daniel Tice whistle on him. But
I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
Yeah, I think it was just kind of a freak thing tonight, but he played well, Franco.
Yeah, there were very early fouls as well. I believe he was 2 fouls in, not even 6 minutes into the game. So they already had to play conservative basketball with him. And at the beginning of tonight's game, I thought we were going to be getting a Kristaps Porzingis masterpiece above 30 points if the fouls weren't rolling in and didn't have an effect on tonight. And I honestly think that if he wasn't limited in his minutes and he wasn't trying to avoid getting those 4th and 5th fouls, I think that he would have been able to play this entire game and be able to have one of those performances that we didn't get out of our star players tonight. And if he could emerge as that third star for the Boston Celtics and really establish himself as a consistent player, that is one way to shift the tides on this team. If you can get him to play at his top tier level, the mismatches that he was able to create tonight with the double big lineup, he was usually getting guarded by someone that's around 6'6" and probably weighs 100 pounds less than him. And they still managed to get out rebounded, but that's more on the other centers on our roster that weren't really doing too much on the defensive end. But I think that he's someone that we're really looking forward to seeing more of. And it really stunk that when he did that put back on Dylan Brooks, that all that momentum just went right down the drain almost immediately after it happened. And the Celtics really haven't found a way to ride out that momentum. It doesn't seem like the Celtics really get those major pushes like we saw a few years ago when they would go on the 17-0 stretches where they almost look unstoppable, and the team on the opposing team looks clueless on what to do to slow them down. And I want to, I don't want to say that's an effort thing, and I feel like that's more once again on play calling. Yeah, I think, and I also think it's play calling because it seems like it's very free flowing this year. It seems a lot less technical on the X's and O's on the offensive end. It doesn't seem like they're doing a good job of creating plays and creating opportunities where you can create that momentum, get those good shots for yourself, be able to get Jason Tatum, Jrue Holiday, Jaylen Brown, all the looks that they're expecting to get, and also to utilize the double big and be able to find Luke Cornett or Nemias Queta with a smaller matchup on him. And Kristaps is a unique weapon when it comes to that. He was playing a lot of tonight at the 4 spot. And if you can drag him out and let's say he brings out a Sengun or Adams, it really makes it very easy for the Celtics to attack the rim, get to the paint. And that might be due to off-ball movement. I feel like that's something that Jason Tatum could have exposed all night tonight, but it seemed like he was just trying to find his 3-point shot before he found anything else. And I just want to see Kristaps become more of that playmaker for the Celtics. Not playmaker, but utilized weapon and really put in situations where the Celtics can put him in his best position.
Well, in terms of Joe Mazzulla mismanaging Kristaps Porzingis or not tonight, I believe it's one of those situations where it's kind of like going for 4th down in football sometimes where, hey, you go for it, you get it, everybody thinks you're the hero, or if you don't get it, everybody's looking at you like an idiot if you're the head coach. And that's kind of what that situation is with foul trouble and your best players if you're a head coach in basketball. You can either take the gamble, keep them out there for a little bit longer, or you're going to sit them down and of course you're just going to have them ride the bench, and then you kind of have to skimp their minutes the rest of the game. So I think going off of Justin's point, that is kind of a hard thing to manage. It's a little bit of a rough situation to manage if you're Joe Mazzulla, especially on a night where Al Horford does not play, and you're looking at the other 3 bigs. Cornett, who had a phenomenal night. You had Queta, and even looked at Tillman in this game for the first time in forever, and maybe in the wrong moment, but that is what happened. In terms of who he put out there on the floor, Joe Mazzulla and the big rotation. But specifically talking about Kristaps Porzingis tonight and his performance, he is somebody lately who has been getting it going for the Celtics early on. We saw in the Lakers game, was getting it going early on. This game easily was the best player on the floor for the first 5 minutes of the game for either team, including the Celtics and the Rockets. Well, Porzingis, this is what I want to see more out of the rest of the game from Porzingis. I want to see more out of him in terms of that consistent effort and those consistent mismatches down inside the paint, because it feels like early on the Celtics go to him, and then throughout the game, we see few and far between in terms of the opportunities Kristaps Porzingis gets down low against mismatches, and that can have a lot to do with adjustments the other team makes, the Celtics opponent is making, not to have too many mismatches out there on the floor with specifically Kristaps Porzingis. But the Celtics, this is where, for me, when Joe Mazzulla gave that interview the other day after the first quarter against the Los Angeles Lakers and said, well, we just have to keep making the right decisions against the coverage that we're seeing. Well, sometimes the coverage you're seeing out there on the floor is a specific coverage meant to force you into particular decisions on the offensive end of the floor. So that's where this game of basketball becomes a chess match and not just checkers, where you're going, oh, they've done this, now we're going to swap this out and do this a different way in order to get this mismatch and attack this on the floor. Well, Joe Mazzulla, that's where we kind of question him as a head coach a lot of the time, is the X's and O's, because the X's and O's for the Boston Celtics, specifically on the offensive end of the floor, they can look good coming out of in a game like we saw tonight, or even against the Lakers. And then as the game progresses, just seems like it's not always there. And the parts of this season has also shown us, do the Celtics have an offensive philosophy other than just shot chucking, jacking threes? Because we've seen a lot of that this season, but in terms of how they're actually getting those threes, sometimes the philosophy is just not entirely there. It's just not entirely there. And ultimately, I think that is kind of a, I don't know if you want to say a knock against Joe Mazzulla in a way, but it can be because he is the head coach of the Boston Celtics. And you can look at the team and go, well, they're maybe not executing exactly what he wants to be executed out on the floor. But ultimately, that does lead back on the head coach of what you're drawing up and what you're getting your players out there to play with in terms of execution and just getting them up to play. Talk a lot about the motivation as well this season, but I think Kristaps Porzingis, he's a huge example of that. Tonight comes out, starts scorching everybody on the floor mismatch wise against the Lakers, same ordeal, and then it just kind of goes away for the game. I know tonight he was in foul trouble, but it goes away for large portions of the game where you kind of look back and think, why wasn't Porzingis inside the post? Why wasn't he in the high post working at that point of the floor more often throughout the game when we saw that working so well early in the game? The one game that really reminds me of that last year was against the Denver Nuggets. Remember last year that when the Denver Nuggets beat the Celtics on their home floor for their first home loss, which was at the end of January last year.
That.
And at that point last season, Kristaps Porzingis started out amazingly against the Denver Nuggets. Didn't see him the rest of the game at all. And that can be the vibe sometimes with Kristaps Porzingis. And I don't necessarily put that all on Kristaps. I do put that on the coaching staff and Joe Mazzulla as well. But if you can actually get those mismatches with Kristaps Porzingis, specifically talking on the offensive end of the floor, we know what he can do defensively, but offensively on that side of the floor, Kristaps Porzingis can be one of your more dominant players if you're the Boston Celtics because he can really stretch the floor out, but he can also be that 7'3" monster who is the most efficient paint scorer in all of the NBA, including Nikola Jokic out there. Think about how good Nikola Jokic is inside the paint. Kristaps Porzingis can be on that level in terms of a paint scorer, and that's why he can be this team's most dangerous offensive weapon. The most frustrating part about it, however, is that we don't always see that out of him and this Celtics offense, whether it is him or Joe Mazzulla and the rest of the Celtics coaching staff. It can go hand in hand, but ultimately we need to see more and more of Kristaps Porzingis on the top of the screen and just contributing to the Celtics offense throughout games, because when he is contributing, feels like the Celtics, they're unbeatable. And that's how we felt about them last season as well. We need to start feeling that way about him and the Celtics this season, because throughout this rough stretch, the rough patch of the Celtics, the rough half of the season so far, Kristaps Porzingis has been a major bright spot for the Celtics regardless. And if you have that weapon out on the floor, the Celtics, this is why we think maybe, just maybe, there is a corner to be turned for this Celtics team and a building block to be put in place.
I agree. I'm so sorry to get off track here, but Franco, what the hell did you just drink out of?
This is a good segue.
Grand grape.
Ocean Spray, hit us up.
Have you heard of a cup?
Hit us up, Ocean Spray. Franco wants the sponsorship. I mean, just think about how many jugs Franco could drink in one post game if we had an Ocean Spray.
So casually. He just pulled it over.
I mean, look at that.
Got two.
You were gonna
get an empty can.
Do not drink that much juice. Do not drink that much juice, dude.
Don't tell me with a good time.
Oh my god. All right. Well, real quick on Porzingis, despite Franco's his juice problem. I agree with you, Seamus. I think the coaching staff, as well as Porzingis, right? It's never just one person. They got to do a much better job at like getting Porzingis easy buckets, get him going, right? Like if it's the second quarter, you haven't really seen Porzingis get one. Drop a play, quick, boom. Porzingis got mismatched down low. Maybe it's he's sitting in the dunker spot, catch him on the backside for a lob, something. You got to get him going sometimes. It kind of feels like, Porzingis starts off the game really hot and he can disappear, or vice versa, where he's kind of disappearing in the first half and you see him, oh, wait, there he is. And I think Boston needs to do a much better job at game planning Kristaps Porzingis for 48 minutes. There was another big man down there tonight, Justin. Who you seem to like? No,
Luke Cornett. Come on? What's not to like about him?
Look at that smile.
So I would go on and say a couple mislapses down the stretch on the defensive end for Luke Cornett, but Joe Mazzulla has come to the podium and addressed them and saying that they were 100% Joe Mazzulla's fault on the busted coverages. But I mean, other than that, Luke Cornett tonight, flawless game, 18 points, 7 rebounds, 2 stocks, 1 block, 1 steal, an assist in a near perfect 8 of 9 from the floor. And guys, I just want to tell you that this is a new reinvented Luke Cornett. This is a guy who we've talked about all the time on the post-game show, came into the league, one of college's best 3-point shooting big men in NCAA history. That's a fact. It's not me being biased towards Luke Cornett.
Is that a fact?
It is a fact.
Oh,
and
wow, look at that.
He comes into the NBA shooting nothing but 3-pointers in Chicago and New York, comes to Boston, has to totally reinvent his game, and that's exactly what he's done. And he has been so good. So good. I really don't see the Celtics making any moves at the trade deadline, but one move they definitely should make is trading away Luke Cornett. He just fits in with this team so well. And again, bias aside of me being a Cornett fanatic, I really felt, the Happy Cornett Club, that's what we'll call it. I was very nervous when Luke Cornett was off the court tonight. And that might sound so crazy.
Oh.
That might sound so crazy
in history that's ever said that.
No, I was, because the spacing on the floor with Luke Cornett in there is just so good. It is just so good. In Neemias Queta, which I gave a lot of my flowers to in the beginning of the season when he had his reps, but the spacing is off with Nimi. And maybe it's because Nimi hasn't been getting as many reps as he was getting in the beginning of the year. Maybe it's just a different lineup. I'm not quite sure what it is. It could just be very much so experience. But the spacing is off when when Neemias Queta is in the game and Luke Cornett's not. I really like the 5-man lineup that we threw out tonight of Kristaps Porzingis, Luke Cornett, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Drew Holiday, rather. I really like that double big with KP in Luke Cornett. I didn't like it the first game. I don't know what it was, but it was just off. I think it was because it was maybe one of the first times we've ever thrown Cornett and Porzingis on the court together, in the first time in 2 years. But I love what I'm getting from Luke Cornett. And Rob, I sent you a clip from a year ago today of you talking about, and this isn't necessarily just calling you out, because a lot of
he's calling me out.
Because actually Seamus called you out the other day for guaranteeing a win against the Lakers, and I didn't even say a word about that. I let you go. So, but
I haven't called you out, bro.
Look at the viewers starting to pile in when I'm talking about Luke Cornett. This is what I'm talking about, when Luke Cornett just needs to be there. We need more Luke Cornetts in this association. But Luke Cornett, I did get scared when Luke Cornett wasn't on the court tonight. The game flows when he's in the game. So come on, Rob. You said a year ago today there's no place. What did you say word for word? There is no place for Luke Cornett on a basketball court.
I said that.
Seamus immediately shook his head. Seamus knew. Seamus is if I could pick one guy to go to the grave with me on Luke Cornett, it's Seamus Zarlingo. He immediately turned his head on you.
I was wrong.
But then a couple post-game shows later, you did admit you were wrong, because I think Luke Cornett had this freak game. But Luke has been so terrific. Definitely worth the extension.
He's definitely worth the extension. I think the thing about Luke that has made him so valuable to this team, kind of like Pritchard, is that contract. You're not going to find many third-string big men making Luke Cornett money that can produce like Luke Cornett can on any given night. As for what changed on my view of Luke, I'm not gonna lie, he started playing well. Luke wasn't doing this. And again, I was wrong, right? You guys saw the vision. I didn't see the vision, but Luke wasn't doing this a year and a half ago, a year ago, on today, right? Like this is new. He's gotten better. He's gotten more comfortable. You saw that tonight with the 18 points, 8 and 9 from the floor. He was very, very efficient. He was a great spacer. I actually thought there was a couple looks he passed up that he should have taken on a little little playing pass with Ime there in that third quarter. You almost kind of wish he shot the ball more. So yes, I will officially admit it. I've said it a couple times on the podcast, on the postgame shows. I am claiming defeat on my war on Cornette. I was wrong. I'm glad I was wrong.
That's not what the segment's about.
I'm sorry.
I'm just saying. There's been more plays. There's been more plays recently where Luke Cornette has been on the perimeter, whether that's give and go, whether that's just setting the screen and he kind of pops out to help space the floor. I'm wondering if one day we just start seeing him shoot those pick, even if it's one.
Sometimes I'm watching them and I'm like, shoot.
Me too. I'm like, you gotta shoot that ball, dude. You're really a stretch big. That's really what you are. But you reinvented your game. Imagine Luke Cornette. I think he should just use. I've said this, you guys. He just use that as like secret weapon. Like just take
wait for playoffs. Just wait for
playoffs.
If you
miss, who cares? It's a wide open shot. You're not mad about shooting a wide open shot like that. You're not just jacking it up. It's a quality shot. So.
Luke Cornette, the first. No, go ahead, Franco. Go ahead.
Oh, I'll go. I was just gonna say, just to fill in, Luke Cornette has been an ideal backup center for the Boston Celtics going on this season. He's done such a great job filling in, especially with Kristaps and Al Horford taking the off nights on the back-to-back games, being with the injuries and load management for the Boston Celtics. I think he's going to continue to grow within that role, and I think he's done just good work on the defensive end. You can line him up. He's been very versatile, which is not something I've been expecting out of him this season. He's looked very comfortable with another big out there on the floor with him, which the Celtics are in dire need of, especially with how slim the rotation of the Boston Celtics is after you get past the starting five and Pritchard and Al. You need a few players that can step up and have these types of performances. And for Luke Cornette to have a game like he did tonight against the Houston Rockets and really help highlight, I think last game we did the two guards, Jrue Holiday and Derek White. If they can now we're highlighting the big men. If we can just get this all to come together on one night, maybe we might start seeing a little bit more consistency from this team moving forward.
You might even see them win a championship maybe one day, right? If they can do it all together.
Too far.
I think it's going to be something to look out for moving forward, especially if we can start to throw him into those rotations and he can continue to match up well against the other bigs.
Well, I'm going to zag a little bit here on all the positivity surrounding Cornette because what I'm going to zag on is, I'm not talking bad on Cornette at all. I have all the praise in the world for Cornette coming up here, but I'm tired of wasting these performances from Luke Cornette and guys like Peyton Pritchard. I mean, really, the last two games where Luke Cornette scored over 15 points, the Celtics lost. The last two games where Peyton Pritchard scored over 20 points, the Celtics lost. And when you get these performances out of these role players, like the Celtics are doing right now and they're seeing right now, you want to win these games. You really do. Because Cornette, they're not going to get every single night. You're not going to get one of these performances. Yet Cornette comes out tonight. He outscores our player spotlight, and Kristaps Porzingis scores 18 points. And really, Justin, I'm in agreement with you. We need more players like this in the NBA. Now, do I believe that it really correlates with all the NBA ratings? Maybe not so much. But at the same time, I think Luke Cornette, he's one of the more inspirational stories in all of the NBA. Find how many players out there have taken a journey like Luke Cornette, where they're traded to a team. We all think he's being waived. And then all of a sudden, comes in, stays on the roster than we actually do. And we didn't necessarily waive him, but we let him walk in free agency the next year. And then all of a sudden, we bring him back into the fold, and he slowly but surely becomes a staple within the Celtics rotation to the point where last year, the Boston Celtics traded for Xavier Tillman at the trade deadline, another big man. And what happened coming into this season? Luke Cornett is grabbing those third string big man minutes. It's either him or Keita. More often than not, it's Luke Cornett. And Tillman, he's nowhere to be found. So through Luke Cornett's journey, he's fought his way from being a player we thought was going to be waived to being on the roster, to not only being on the roster, but being in the rotation. And then after that, beating out somebody who we thought would even take over his spot in the rotation this season after trading for him last year, Tillman being that player, of course. So Luke Cornett's journey with the Boston Celtics, super inspirational, involves a championship run as well. And this season, it's only getting better. He's putting up some of the best performances of his entire career. And it just seems like season after season, he's more and more equipped and in shape in order to go out there and perform the way he does. And what is so interesting, Justin, you already mentioned it, his first game as a Boston Celtic was in 2021 against the Oklahoma City Thunder down in Oklahoma City. And what did Cornett do when he came out?
Hit
Two pick and pop plays for 3-pointers. Nowadays, you don't see Cornett taking threes at all. And he could take threes theoretically. We've seen him do it in the past. We've seen him, Justin, you mentioned the stat, one of the best 3-point shooting big men in all of college history. And he can shoot those balls if, of course, he wants to. But he's... My goodness, we just can't get away from these phrases on this post game. It's Luke Cornett. You got to love his balls.
Those balls.
But anyway,
it's crazy.
you got to love him shooting those balls. But with Luke Cornett, he's completely reinvented his game to be the putback king around the bucket, to be the roll man the Celtics can rely on, and his timing is just impeccable every time he rolls to the rim. And not only that, but defensively as well. He's always in the right position on the floor, and he's a very versatile defender, like Franco said, of course, and maybe against everybody except for LeBron James. I will add that was pretty rough the other night. Every switch on the Cornett was just barbecue chicken, but against everybody else, Luke Cornett always gives him that Luke Cornett contest. He's always the active feet from Luke Cornett goes along with his increased athleticism within his career. But what the biggest thing is for me in Luke Cornett, it's his IQ and positioning. He's always in the right spots. And we think back to that game against Atlanta where he came up with 6 stocks, 2 blocks, 4 steals. The reason he came up with all those blocks and steals that game is because he was always in the right spot to make the right play. And that was the highlight in that game for not only Luke Cornett, but the Boston Celtics as well. Unfortunately, again, they walked out with a loss in that particular matchup. But Luke Cornett in that game, he was phenomenal. And tonight, yet again, he was playing that role for the Boston Celtics. And he's been doing this as of late, I will say, against teams that do not really have big men, right? Think about the Houston Rockets. They only really have Steven Adams, Alperen Şengün. You think back to that Wizards game in mid-December, of course, against the Atlanta Hawks. They have Capella and Okongwu. Not really much coming off the bench after that. Luke Cornett eats in these matchups. He just eats. And that is something valuable the Celtics have off their bench, is to have Luke Cornett come in after you have guys like Kristaps Porzingis, who, of course, is on the top of the screen tonight. And man, we should have had a Justin's Flowers thing on the top of the screen. He's actually the only Justin's Flower graphic that we have ready for the top of the screen. That was a total mishap tonight. But regardless, I'm sure we'll have more opportunities in the future for that.
Oh, Luke.
But when you have, oh yes. We have Porzingis and Horford in the lineup like you do with the Boston Celtics. And then you also have Cornett as a third big man doing what he can do off the bench, especially eating against these teams with a lack of a big man rotation. That is a valuable commodity to have if you're the Boston Celtics. And unfortunately, it's one of the things that gives us hope for the Celtics team that maybe they can turn the corner moving forward. But it also frustrates you at the same time knowing, again, how talented and how good this basketball team can be and some of the contributions they're getting out of their role players right now, whether that's Cornette, whether that's Pritchard on some occasions. And yet some of these games are resulting in losses. You look at that and go, the Celtics, they can just get it together at the top. And Franco, you mentioned it, if it can all come together at once, this team can be a very, very special basketball team. And Luke Cornette, his performance tonight, his performance this entire season, and his entire career trajectory with the Boston Celtics, it's very much a part of the specialty of the Celtics and what they can still achieve this season.
I think like for Luke, it is a shame because you're wasting. I mean, you get 18 points out of Luke Cornette and you lost. Like what? Like, excuse me?
They should all apologize to him.
That happened against the Hawks too. What, he had 17 points that night.
And letters left in his locker right now.
Yeah, I mean, he really deserves these flowers, Justin. I mean, talk about it. But how many times have we seen?
You don't think Luke does, or you do think he does?
I do. I'm saying, if anything, he deserves them, especially tonight after this loss. I mean, he putting up 18 points, playing well defensively. I thought he did a phenomenal job on Sengun when he was in there. It's a shame because you talk about it. It feels like Boston, like kind of like what Franco was alluding to earlier in the show, is like they can't really put together a complete game. It's like there's nights where Luke doesn't do this, which is, again, it's normal. He's a third string big man. He can't do this every night. And you kind of needed him to because the starters like couldn't give you everything. And then, there's games where it's like this, where Luke does show out and Pritchard does show out right off the bench. And it's like, okay, starters like Tatum, Brown, like give us something, right? Like if you just give us something, this is offensively a much better, puts you in a much better spot. So it's a shame, I think, overall. Boston, they're getting it, just not at the same time, and they're not clicking all together.
They'll figure it out.
They will. And we'll see, obviously, because again, there's a lot of ball left, but Boston, they need to turn things around, guys, and they're going to get that opportunity to turn things around.
Coming up, and man, Chicago in New Orleans, there was no excuse.
None.
No excuse to not walk out.
One too many times.
We have, but guess what? I'm still going to say it. In Christ's sake, we have yet to win consecutive games other than the Los Angeles games in almost a month. So they got to come out with wins against those teams. There's no excuse. There really is no excuses. I don't want to bring up the injury reports. I don't care if 3 of our 5 starters are out. Against the Chicago Bulls and the New Orleans Pelicans, you win those games. Honestly, I want to see another convincing win, but at the same time, I guess it's like, oh, who cares?
Yeah, it's going to take a lot more from you.
You're going to point the other way.
I got it.
No, you didn't.
No, I did.
And that's the thing, Rob, is it is going to take more than just one game. And it is so clear because it's like every other game we're blowing out a team and then we're taking a terrible loss, cough, cough, at home against teams that you should beat and you have chances to beat. That's the thing. You have chances to beat. Even a really good Rockets team. Yes, we were undermanned. Yes, Houston coming in, beat the Cleveland Cavaliers 2 times before this. I mean, as if they're not going to go back to Houston on a huge high note, defeating the Celtics and Cavaliers in 3 of their, in their last 3 games. That's huge for them. But there's no excuse for the Celtics to finish this week losing to the Chicago Bulls in the New Orleans Pelicans. There's not.
Right. Well, heading into the All-Star break here, Boston's going to have a unique opportunity to get a mix of, weaker opponents and some stronger teams, as they got Chicago coming up and they play the Pelicans, the Sixers, the Cavaliers, the Mavericks, the Knicks, and then Miami and San Antonio, which brings them into the All-Star break. So guys, you look at that stretch, 4 straight games on TNT or ESPN. There are some teams there that are
grow up. You're real.
Franco cannot walk the streets of New York. It's just impossible.
Well, I would run those streets.
That is true. Sprint them. Talking about running.
You would be running those streets.
I'm a pimp rocking Gucci mink, and without me, the whole ship would sink. I don't
know if I'd quote Conor McGregor anymore. But however,
dude, Franco, drink some juice and relax, my man. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness! Is it past midnight at least? Are we at least?
Yeah, we're a minute. Yeah, we were officially.
dude, a
Oh, I
minute
got
past
it. I beat
midnight.
it by a
He
minute.
beat it after
Right
a
at the buzzer.
CTW after
Bang.
dark. He beat it.
He beat it.
Oh,
But again,
buzzer
there's
beater.
some
Which
opportunities
Pritchard
coming
sucks
up.
at now, so I don't think he's the buzzer beater king. I just want to get that out there. Just want to say something. Rob, what was your comment earlier on Peyton Pritchard? Something about he had one shot in the finals. What did you say?
Oh
Something
yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but yeah, you know what? That's great. I'm gonna say this to everybody right now. I'm so sick and tired of just like 5 seconds or 6 seconds left, right? And plenty of time to run a play and get a quality look, right? Throw it to Pritchard and let him dribble down the court and huck it. It's like I get it. He made two half-court shots in the NBA Finals. Awesome. It's like give it up. It's been 46 games. I think he made me one against Washington, if I can remember. Like, give it up. Stop. Seriously, it's so aggravating. It's like the Celtics had 6.6 seconds to get the ball down the court and get a good look. That is a lot of time in basketball time, right? You have so much time, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Pritchard, go get a bucket." And you got blocked. So very frustrating there. I texted them that, and because I'm sick and tired of it.
Are you good? Are you
What'd I
okay?
do? What'd
Because
I
you're
do?
wicked pale.
It's the damn lighting. All right?
Don't make him cause like Hiroshima in his room right now. That's what it always looks like. It's just goes.
All right, we gotta end this.
Like, oh my goodness.
All right. Well, guys, the Celtics, they're gonna have an opportunity. No, see,
We're taking so many shots here now. Pritchard shot. We got New York shots out here. Yeah, a lot of intro. Definitely a lot of intro.
Dude, that was brutal.
Content.
Cut to that. Cut to that after a loss. Cut to that after a loss to the Knicks is Franco saying, "I run these streets. I run these New York streets." That's funny.
Justin, you did that. You did that. Who was everybody's what favorite game everybody had a couple weeks ago?
Yeah.
It kind of highlights too. Most of everybody's
Wait, what I
favorite
did?
game was the first game of the season.
It's
like that was like right before Christmas.
No,
it's like,
dude, our favorite game was a Clippers game where we scored 51 in that second quarter.
Oh yeah, that was game
no,
6.
no.
Brad Stevens went on the
it's 40 games
broadcast, and
ago.
all of a sudden the Celtics went nuclear.
Yeah.
Celtics went nuclear. All right,
Yeah,
well, we
but,
better.
but other
close
than
out
that,
before-
everybody was
before,
Knicks,
before Franco.
Celtics.
Before Franco.
But yeah, Franco's got to look in his eye. I don't like it. So.
Well, the camera's starting to tilt.
Celtics, guys, they're going to be back in
Duct
action
tape tonight.
following a very
Tape.
poor
Duct tape.
loss to the Houston Rockets. 114-112 was your final score, guys. Dylan Brooks, how about a career night? 10 made threes, 10 of 15 from behind the arc is probably the greatest shooting game. I believe it actually is percentage-wise in terms of made in percentage clip. It was the best shooting game we've seen inside TD Garden. Guys, they'll be back in action. I believe Wednesday night. It's Tuesday.
Yep.
Sorry, the
Against
time
Chicago.
change. Yes, against Chicago, the 29th. The tip-off is at 7:30. That is going to be back at the TD Garden. Guys, after that final buzzer sounds, come right back here and hopefully watch us do our annual win post-game show following, which I'm guessing New Orleans will be the annual loss post-game show. So, guys, come back here, watch us talk about a win as the Boston Celtics will look to bounce back yet again, guys. Cue the music. Guys, cue the music. And until next time, of course, you know the drill, guys.